yourself, where you live, the role that you are running for, what candidate position, and why you decided to run for office.
So I am State Senator Jim Brochin. I've been in the Maryland Senate for 16 years. I live in Cockeysville, Maryland. And after 16 years in the Maryland Senate, I've decided to run for county executive for a few reasons. First of all, I spent the last 5 or 6 years in the Senate, spending a lot of my time working with constituents to stop overdevelopment. And I think as county executive, we need a county executive who's going to protect and preserve open space and green space. I think we need more parks, more ball fields, more rec centers in Baltimore County. And I think somebody needs to step up and finally say we can't develop every square inch of Baltimore County and pour concrete all over Baltimore County, and we need more green space. So that's the first reason. Second thing is I have seen an opioid epidemic across the state as a state legislator that is beyond belief. Baltimore County has the second highest rate of overdoses in the state of Maryland. And I think we need more leadership and vision when it comes to opioid abuse. I want to build the first residential treatment center in Baltimore County. And more importantly, I want to do what Anne Arundel County is doing. We need to look at what Anne Arundel County is doing where if you're an addict and it's time and you know that you can't live the life you're living anymore, you can go to a police station, you can go to a fire station, and you can basically say, I'm ready for treatment, and you can get treatment on demand. And we need to do what Anne Arundel County is doing and offer treatment on demand for the citizens of Baltimore County. All of us, I go across my district and I talk about opioid addiction and I see heads that start to nod because everybody has a friend, a family member, and we know treatment might not work the first, second, or third time, but we need to keep at it because there's a lot of people who have addiction issues that can be saved, and I think we have a moral obligation to do it. Last issue that I think is equally as important is the homelessness. We need to look at best practices across the country. Cuyahoga County in Ohio has something called Housing First. It's an initiative where they've made a conscious decision that, you know what, it doesn't make sense to take homeless people and give them day treatment centers, come in, feed them, give them the services they need, and then 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock comes and they're back out on the street again. And they're ravaged by the weather, by addiction issues, and being assaulted or things like that. We need to look at our homeless population and start a pilot program where we give our homeless apartments where they can have treatment brought to them. They can get their Social Security benefits, they can get living skills treatment, they can get psychological and psychiatric services. We can partner with things like Vehicle for a Change to get them vehicles and help them find jobs and start to, so they can turn their lives around and so we can do better. One more thing that I think is equally important is Baltimore County has a lot of trash on the streets. I mean, it is unbelievable. Plastic bags, bottles, cans, it is unbelievable. We need to start a program where we pay people to bring in plastic bags and bottles and things like that and work on recycling. We need to start a public-private partnership so we have a cleaner Baltimore County. And I think it would be really neat to have the vision and do a public-private partnership to start with that. So those are just some ideas that are popping through my head over the last year or two, which have moved me from leaving a Senate seat that's very safe that I've had for 16 years, that I think it's time to move to the next venue.
Yes. Thank you, Jim, for that thorough explanation. And I'm going to give you a question. You should have enough time left. Talk to us a little bit about some jurisdictions provide real estate tax discounts for their seniors. Would you consider introducing or supporting such a bill like that in Baltimore County?
So that is a fantastic question, and guess what just happened Friday? I'm the chairman of the Baltimore County Senate delegation, and we had a bill in our committee that was introduced by Shirley Nathan Pulliam, and we voted it out of delegation, and I supported it. And now if you're up to 150% of the poverty level, and Senator Kelly was a supporter of it also, then you are going to receive a tax credit against your property taxes. So the answer is yes. I'm a co-sponsor of it, and we got it out of delegation, so now it's on its way to budget and taxation.
Awesome.
And it's time. It really is. You know, our seniors are on fixed incomes, and I think this is. I mean, the salary threshold's pretty low. Also, I mean, this is the salary threshold if you're making $16,000 a year or less, and you're not eligible for any of the other credits the Baltimore County offers.
Thank you so much. That's your 7 minutes.
That's my
Pete.
7.
Thank you.
Okay. I apologize for not staying for the Q&A, but I have to get to Annapolis because session starts at 8 o'clock. But thank you very much for your time and listening.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Johnny O. Is he here?
I'm here.
Hi.
Hi.
Come on. Yes.
How you doing?
Great. How are you, sir?
Doing great. Thanks, everybody. How's everybody doing tonight?
Good.
Good evening.
Yep.
I'm Johnny O, and
Yes.
I'm running for Baltimore County Executive as well. I'm running because I think it's time that we start doing big things in Baltimore County and we stop waiting to do them. We do them right now. I'm running because it's about our future, a future that has come very much into perspective for me through the eyes of my daughter, Daria, who's 2 years old, and I want the best for all our families and all of our children, including my own. You know, Baltimore County has been very good to me. I have been honored and blessed to grow up in Baltimore County. I grew up in eastern Baltimore County over in the Dundalk community. I remember hearing the blast furnace at Sparrows Point as I was a kid. And you know, it's a gritty sound, but it is very comforting to me because I knew growing up that the people and the families I grew up with had access to a good job with wages and benefits and health care and a pension that they could provide for their family and pursue their version of the American dream. But I also saw what happened is that sound went away, and as people lost their jobs, they lost their homes, they lost their hope. In the midst of all that, my community instilled in me a work ethic and values about working hard and giving back, and family and faith. And I was fortunate enough to be, after going through the Baltimore County Public School System, the first in my family to graduate from college here in Baltimore County. I went to Goucher College in Towson. It's where I met my wife, Marissa. Went on to actually got a PhD recently from UMBC this past December. But I moved back to eastern Baltimore County to become a teacher because education was so fundamental as a value in terms of what we can do for all our kids. And in addition to being a teacher in the school system, I was a member of the state legislature as a delegate over in eastern Baltimore County for 9 years, and was proud of fighting for working families and education and transforming the landscape. Over in eastern Baltimore County, we now have TradePoint Atlantic, creating tens of thousands of jobs on the horizon. We have national retail in eastern Baltimore County for the first time in my lifetime, and I was pleased to be a part of that transformation. But most importantly, as I said to start, my wife and I, we're raising a family in Baltimore County now, and it's about the future, and what that future looks like. And what I want listeners and everyone in this room to know is what you get with Johnny Olszewski as Baltimore County Executive are better schools, more jobs, and an open, accessible, transparent government that works for you. Now in schools, what you'll get from me is we're going to feed our kids. I've seen what it's like when kids aren't fed. If your stomachs aren't full, you can't fill the mind. And so we're going to expand both our breakfast programs and our lunch programs. We're going to invest in a 21st century school infrastructure plan because no kid should have to learn in buildings that have brown drinking water or are literally sliding into the ground. We're not going to pit communities against each other. We're going to make sure that all our schools are top-notch and that every kid is learning in a new or like-new building. And lastly, we're going to invest in the people that matter most, which are our teachers and our students. Baltimore County has been woefully underfunding positions like pupil personnel workers and school counselors and school psychologists, and we have to up our game to invest in those services, wraparound services, to create community schools, and to lower class sizes. And that's what you'll get with the Johnny Olszewski as your county executive. On jobs, I'll expand the kind of work I did in the legislature. I was the primary sponsor of a bill called EARN, Employment Advancement Right Now, where we partnered with the private sector to find out what jobs existed. And actually, I'm really proud that the county executive is going to be proposing legislation right here in Baltimore County called Job Connector that replicates exactly what I did in Annapolis. We've created thousands of jobs across the state and grown that program from a $4 million program under Governor O'Malley to a $10 million program under Governor Hogan. I am best positioned to make sure that that Jobs Connector program gets off the ground and is successful here in Baltimore County. But I'll also affirm the dignity of work when people are having those jobs and are connected. That's why I'm proud to be the only candidate who has publicly announced my support for a $15 statewide minimum wage. It's why I will make sure that people can get to work, and I will establish a Department of Transportation as Baltimore County Executive, and I will make sure that people can live in the county they work, and I'm the only candidate, Republican or Democrat, who supports ending housing discrimination here in Baltimore County. Lastly, I'll make sure it's a government that's open, accessible, and transparent, that works for you. You might find it hard to believe, in our $3.5 billion budget, with 830, give or take, 1,000 residents, if you wanted to take a venture to guess, how many people, some of you have heard this before, but if you had to guess, how many people testified on our budget last year in Baltimore County? Zero is the answer. And yet, when the county council had an opportunity to expand those number of budget hearings and have them throughout the county, that proposal was voted down. Similarly, most people, like tonight, are at a meeting in the evening where you can participate. You don't have to leave your job to participate. The county council, unfortunately, does a lot of their work on pieces of legislation during the day, during their work sessions. They also had an opportunity to move those council sessions to the evening, but also voted that down. I'll change both of those things as county executive. And then lastly, I will enact meaningful campaign finance reform. I'm the only candidate to have called for a public option in our campaign finance because it's time that the government belongs to you and is funded by you and is powered by you and not the special interests. So if you believe in what's possible and you want a better Baltimore County, I encourage you to join our campaign, be a part of what's possible, and let's do big things and do it right now together.
Great, thank you. Now, he used his whole 7 minutes, but I have to get one question in for him, okay? At least one. You talked a lot about the educational aspects for Baltimore County. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you would do or how you would go about increasing school safety and helping parents and communities feel safe with
Sure.
the current issues with guns and crisis in schools?
Very, very timely question. You know, as both a teacher and as a parent, that's something that's very near and dear to my heart. And I think, first and foremost, what we need to do is make sure that we're investing in the school infrastructure in terms of securing the environment. Perhaps we need to invest in locking mechanisms and technologies. We can invest in other sort of security protocols. The other thing that we really need to do to make our schools safe, which is what I mentioned in my response, is invest in our people. Invest in those school counselors and school psychologists. We are, in some places, 2-to-1 over the national recommendations. And in other places, we're 10-to-1 over the national recommendations. You know, and I think what we'll do is it's equally important to say what we won't do. And what I won't do as county executive is support efforts to put more guns in our schools. I'll oppose any effort to arm our teachers. And I will be very careful about school resource officers. We need to be very thoughtful about where we implement those, because I can tell you, studies have shown that actually arrests go up when there are police officers in school buildings, and there have not been statistically significant reductions or prevention of unfortunate incidents. So I can tell you, as someone who has a little girl who will be starting elementary school soon, I don't know that it's necessarily appropriate to have police officers walking around with guns in our elementary schools. So I think it's a combination of investing in the infrastructure and investing in our people, in addition to opposing things that won't help make our families safe.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Next, Ms. Vicki Allman.
Hi, Deborah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. So, Vicki, if you would tell us about yourself, introduce yourself, maybe where you live, what you're running for, and why you chose to run.
My name is Vicki Allman, and right now I am the representative on the County Council for the 2nd District, which is Pikesville, Reisterstown, Owings Mills, and east of Charles Street. This is my 8th year on the County Council. I began over 20 years ago, before elected office, as a volunteer and a community advocate. I worked in our elementary schools, middle and high schools as PTA president, as a PTA member, as whatever I needed to do in our public schools. I've always been an advocate for our children's education. From there, I worked as president of different community associations and as president of a coordinating council that had about 75 communities under it. And that's where I learned about Baltimore County and its processes, zoning, code enforcement, all those wonderful things that communities deal with all the time. And then I began to know some of our public officials, and I started campaigning and volunteering for them. So it was a life of volunteerism. And in 1996, I was instrumental in getting the School Resource Officer program in Baltimore County. And we are now 63 strong in our middle and high schools, working on some new strategies for our elementary schools, because our elementary schools are where we've missed the boat. We have a lot of children who already want to belong to something, and if it's a gang, it's a gang. But if we can save some of these kids from gangs and those who don't have the parent support that they need or grandparent support that they need, I think it's a great thing to do. As county council person, I have put together legislation that does help feed children in schools. We have a pilot program now that's been running for over a year. We have 4 schools in the program, and we feed them breakfast and lunch. They have no forms to fill out, no farm forms. The parents do not have to fill out forms, and a lot of them haven't been filling out forms, so the kids have been hungry. Whether it's a language barrier or whether it's just not wanting to have that stigma attached to their child. So in 4 of our schools, we're serving breakfast and lunch every day. We're feeding lots and lots of children who are hungry, and we are looking to implement community eligibility as they do in the city, where children are fed breakfast and lunch. We also have programs that send backpacks home on the weekends in the summer, and we also have other areas where kids can get food as well. I've also put together an advisory group for the elderly, where we can look at our elderly citizens, and our senior citizens are growing day by day, and we can look at their issues, whether it's food, and it can be, whether it's paying their gas and electric bill, whether it's living in an assisted living or in their own apartment, or in the house they've lived in for 60 years and they just can't afford to put a new roof on or get a new furnace. There are programs that we're putting in place that will actually help to do that. We have, as a county council, we have put together several pieces of legislation for transparency and accountability, and we're very proud of that. We want that to continue to move forward. As county executive, I would do, as the county council person, I have seen what Baltimore County does well and what we can do better. And as the county executive, I would concentrate on our communities and bringing sustainability back to our communities. Our communities need a good public school, and we have issues in our public school. We can't go all over Baltimore County and just know that there's going to be a good school waiting for your kids to go to. We have to make sure that there's equity across Baltimore County and that every child has a right to a public education and gets one in a great facility with good teachers and guidance counselors and support staff, and to be safe. Also, public safety. We need to make sure our police officers and our fire people have the resources and the people that they need to keep our communities safe. The other thing to help sustainable communities is economic development. We have to take a look at smart growth. We have to bring jobs into the area. And yes, it has to be done wisely. But I was instrumental in bringing Foundry Road to Owings Mills. And I can tell you it was under a lot of duress that I did that. From a lot of people who were not happy with me at the time, other developers. But we brought Foundry Road to Owings Mills, and it's changed Owings Mills for the better. So I will end with that and answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Vicki.
Do I use my 7 minutes?
No, even so, you still get one question.
All right.
I'd like to go back and stay with the part on education. You spoke about it a lot. Outside of the educational system, public education, what other types of services or resources would you provide or bring to Baltimore County to support youth outside of school time?
Well, one of the things that we are lacking is recreation for families, recreation for kids. We just don't have it. We've taken the basketball nets down from our schools. Kids don't have anything to do. And to me, it's one of the most important things that we need to find a way to provide rec space for families, to rec together, to do things together. If it means another Y, if it means a community center, I believe in partnerships and relationships, and I think that we have to come together as community, as Baltimore County, and figure out where we can help our youth be more productive and stay out of trouble, and help our families bond together even more.
Okay. Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
We are moving on to our county council candidates, and we have Ms. Sheila Ruth. Hi, Sheila. Great. Welcome. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little about yourself, where you live, where you're from, your role you're running for, and why you chose to run.
Great, thank you. My name is Sheila Ruth. I live in the Westview Park area of Catonsville in District 44B, Council District 1. I'm running for County Council in District 1. I have been an activist for at least a couple of years, working to help promote policies that put people and planet first. And so I'm running because I want to be able to have a role in government to make people's lives better and to improve the environment. I have done many things, including working with a group of activists from around the county to oppose the 287G program, which would have allowed the Correctional Institute to sign a contract with ICE for them to enforce immigration. There are a lot of reasons not to do that. It could have cost the county $5 million a year, in addition to being not really our correctional officer's job. So a number of us did a lot in terms of collecting petitions.
May I have your attention, please? Will the owner of a two-door silver Infiniti G37 license plate RCX1441 please move your vehicle?
Thank you. Collecting petitions, testifying before the county council, rallying with CASA. I've done a number of other things. I've testified in Annapolis. I've attended innumerable rallies. So as I've also supported the Fight for 15 for about the last 2 years. I think it's very important that people be able to earn a living wage, and currently people can't. At the current minimum wage in Baltimore County, someone has to work 90 hours a week in order to afford a rent at fair market value. That's 2 jobs. You have to work 2 jobs just to be able to afford rent, and that's not right. That's statistics from the National Low Income Housing Coalition. And really, according to their statistics, you would have to earn $21 an hour in order to afford fair market rent at 40 hours a week. So $15 an hour is the least we can do. Now, I'm working with the Fight for 15 to try to get this passed in Annapolis, and I hope that it passes at the statewide level. But if it doesn't, and I'm elected, I will work to pass it for the county, because I think Baltimore County workers deserve a living wage. And I'm hoping also that if it passes in Baltimore County, that will provide an incentive for the city to pass it as well, because being the closest neighbor to the city, it's harder for the city to say jobs are going to leave the city, because the county will also have that $15 minimum wage. And you know, research shows that a $15 minimum wage doesn't cause a loss of jobs. I also am very concerned about economic concentration. We have pockets of poverty where people are herded into low-income pockets, and racial segregation. And so one of the first things that I would want to do is to pass the HOME Act. The HOME Act would prevent housing discrimination by source of income. Essentially, right now, landlords can say they won't rent to you if you're using federal housing vouchers. Now, you know, there's a lot of misconceptions about that, but the fact is, around 30% of the people using housing vouchers are seniors, and another 30% are people with disabilities, and most of the rest are just families who want to be able to have a good place to live with their children and send their children to a good school and a place that's around jobs. So, you know, we need to pass this, and I think it's disgusting that 3 out of 4 Democrats and all of the Republicans on the county council voted against this when it came up before the council in 2016. So I'm going to pass this. I'm also going to work to increase the availability of housing, of affordable housing throughout the county and not just clustered in those certain areas. The final thing I want to say is that I think the most important thing is for the county council person to treat this as a full-time job, and I would treat this as a full-time job. I'm privileged enough that I don't have to work another job in order to support myself. I can live on my husband's income, which gives me the time that I could put full-time into this. I would have regular town halls, starting my first month in office in different parts of the district, because I think, you know, our district, Catonsville, and I love Catonsville, but Central Catonsville tends to get a lot of the focus, and so I want to make sure we're having meetings in Woodlawn and in Lansdowne and in Baltimore Highlands and in Westview Park where I live. And I would be out in the communities, meeting with people and hearing what people have to say. So there's a lot more, but I only have limited time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's think about if you were elected into your role, what could you do to help with increasing small business contracts for minorities in Baltimore County?
What could I do to...
Specifically for women.
For women. Well, I'm a small business owner myself, and I think it's very important to help small businesses generally. Small businesses have a difficult job competing. I have a publishing company, and I started my publishing company at a time of change in the industry, but there's a huge bias towards big publishers, where small publishers have a very hard time to get a foothold in the industry. And so as a woman also, I know how difficult it is to compete. And I do think it's important for minority and women-owned small businesses to have some advantages. And so one of the first things I would do is really focus on small businesses in those communities which are often neglected and marginalized. Certain areas of the county don't get as much attention, and I think we need to make sure we're giving incentives to small businesses that want to start up in those areas. I think, okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Pete Malkovich.
Good evening, Deborah.
Hello, hello.
Good evening, everyone.
To start off, introduce yourself.
My name is Pete Malkovich. I'm a lifelong resident of Baltimore. I grew up in Baltimore City in the west side. I saw things change. I moved to Baltimore County in 2010. I am a Baltimorean true, and I went to grade school in Elkhorn. I went to high school at Cardinal Gibbons. I went to college at UMBC. I got my master's degree at the University of Maryland Graduate School, and I went to law school at the University of Maryland. I'm running because I'm angry. I'm angry because I think government has failed, in Southwest Baltimore at least. I look at Lansdowne High School. I'm part of a community association in Baltimore Highlands, and there's a woman there who has been working night and day to try and get a new high school in Baltimore County, in Lansdowne. And she just doesn't get any support. The whole area, there are drugs in Baltimore Highlands. Every month we come together, and when we talk about, well, the police said they were going to help, they come out for maybe a week. They don't do anything. It's like there's nobody staying on the police. There's nobody who's working for this community. Education is so fundamental to succeed. Yeah, I've proved that. My dad was a steel worker. He worked at that steel for 42 years. He got cancer 3 years after he retired. And that's, fortunately, he made enough money that he was able to send me to college. But how many of you are in similar situations? You've got to get education in order to succeed. Education is the key. And when I look at the schools in this area, I think there's so much more that needs to be done. We've got to be able to protect our kids. We've got to be able to present quality educational programs. I taught at UMBC for 10 years in the political science program. I taught American government. I got to teach people about how government is supposed to work. I should also point out that I'm the first Republican to speak. I think jobs are crucial. I do a lot of criminal defense in my legal practice. I do things cheap for people, and I see how drugs and lack of education affect people. I see how that leads them to crime. I heard the other candidates talking about gangs being so appealing. Well, that's true. When you don't have an education, you don't have a chance to get a job that's going to be able to let you support your family. I think that's a problem. But I think a bigger problem is that Southwest Baltimore keeps getting ignored. I see all of the jobs coming in the eastern part of the county. Now, I see where Sparrows Point used to be and lots of jobs coming there. I see everything happening on the eastern side of the county and nothing happening on this side. So I'm angry. I want to do something to help this side of town. I don't believe in the $15 an hour wage that I've heard the Democrats talk about, and here's why. When you have $15 an hour wages for people that are minimum, what does that do to the middle class? The middle class who aren't getting raises. State employees in this state haven't had a raise in 2 years, 3 years. It's been a long time since there's been a raise. So what does that do when people start making, and who are flipping burgers, are making $15 an hour, when all of a sudden their wages are being increased by 50%, from $7.25 an hour up to $15 an hour? What's that going to do? What's that going to do to the business owners who own the businesses? They're going to decrease the jobs. I've heard in other parts talking that it's pure economics. You have to decrease jobs when you increase the cost of production. It's a no-brainer. I don't believe in ordering people who own property that they have to rent to somebody because the government says so. This country is built on life, liberty, and property. And when you have a liberty interest, you don't have the government telling you what to do with your property. I just don't buy into the whole argument that you have to rent to this person. No, you don't. Drugs are a big problem. And I've personally seen lots of people involved in the drug situation. It starts out slow, and it goes to heroin. Heroin's cheap. And I don't see any effort being made to go after the dealers and putting them in jail. You've got to take the source of the drugs out of the community. That's what you've got to do. We've got to focus on police and policing. Immigration, I've heard talk about that. I'm in favor of having ICE work with local authorities to enforce immigration laws, and here's why. How many of your schools are overcrowded with people who aren't citizens? How are you going to have a community that presents a quality education when you have 40 kids in the bus?
Hey, if I can't
Let them
interrupt,
have a
y'all can't
chance.
interrupt.
Please, let every candidate continue, sir.
I think illegal immigrants are a big problem. The amount of money it costs our society. I heard the $5 million cost to the county. How much money is the county spending on education for illegal immigrants? It's taking away from the resource officers that we don't have, the psychologists. How many are being overburdened because of that? So, those are my positions. And I'm running for 1st District Councilman because I'm angry. I don't know if I'm out of time or not.
No, you have 1 minute. I get to ask you one question. Considering what you've articulated about the drugs that we see in the communities, share with us some things that you may do to try to mitigate the current opioid crisis.
Education is key. You stop somebody from using. I remember when I was working with the state's attorney's office in Baltimore City, I asked a young person, what made you stick a needle in your arm for the first time? Her response was, when I was 14, my mom, who was a drug user, wanted a hit, and she said to her user, or her dealer, I want a hit. And he said, well, give me your money. And she said, well, I don't have any money. He said, well, let me have sex with your daughter. And the daughter was like, no. The mother held her daughter down while the dealer put heroin into the girl's arm. That was the first time she stuck a needle in her arm. That can't exist, you know? How are we allowing people to have children who are putting them at such risk? We talk about the safety of our kids in schools. You want kids to succeed in schools, you help them at home. That's where education starts, really. Teachers are there to facilitate the parents, but it's the parents' job to raise the child, not the school. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Next, we have Mr. Tom Quirk. Councilman Tom Quirk.
How you doing?
Great. How are you?
Good.
Good to see you.
It's great to be here.
Yep. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us why you're going to run again?
Great. Good evening. My name is Councilman Tom Quirk. I'm here tonight with two of my staff, Kathy Ingers, who helps me in the central part of the district, and Margaret Stokes, who helps me in the northern part of the district. They both do a great job, and I know a lot of you know them, and we're all out there a lot talking with all of you, so it's really good to be here tonight and have an opportunity to showcase my record. And I live in Oella with my family. I live right on Westchester Avenue, and my theme and my re-election campaign is the leadership we need, priorities that we share, and a record of results. And a little background, I'm a local small business owner. I'm a certified financial planner. I actually run a national company. It's an investment company with clients in 19 different states. I'm a father, most importantly. I have two kids, Teddy, who's a senior at Catonsville High School, and Sophie, who's at Catonsville Middle School. So both my kids are in public schools. And then I think I have a history of effective results-oriented leadership in the community and on the county council. And, I heard, it's kind of just saying one opponent on the far right, one opponent on the far left. I'm sort of a moderate, and I think Southwest Baltimore County is generally a moderate district. But I did hear my opponent on the Republican side say that he doesn't think anything's happening in Southwest Baltimore County. I couldn't disagree any more than that statement. I mean, to me, that's just a statement clearly. Let me just give you some of the record results, if I might. We're spending $317 million for our schools in Southwest Baltimore County right now. Of the $1.3 billion for the entire county, Southwest Baltimore County is getting a very decent amount at $317 million. We have new elementary schools at Catonsville Elementary, Relay Elementary, Westtown Elementary, Lansdowne Elementary, Chadwick Elementary, which is really important because Chadwick's going to help relieve the overcrowding at Johnny Cake, which we must do. We have an addition at Westchester Elementary. We just did air conditioning at Baltimore Highlands, Edmondson Heights, Arbutus Elementary, Arbutus Middle, Southwest Academy. All those schools just got air conditioning because, yes, we had a major air conditioning problem. But with my help from my colleague, Vicki Allman, who I support very strongly for county executive, we made sure we fixed air conditioning. And we also we're working on a substantial renovation at Woodlawn High School. We're putting over $45 million in Woodlawn High School. And we're also working on Lansdowne, initially for $60 million at Lansdowne High School. And we're hoping, if we can keep pushing, to get a brand new school at Lansdowne, because I disagree with the county executive. If Delaney High School should get a new high school, well, Lansdowne should get a new high school, because Lansdowne's in the worst shape of any high school. And so that's a position I did change, because if the county executive can find the money somewhere to build Delaney, well, if Cadillacs go in Delaney, well, Cadillacs should go in Lansdowne too. Not Chevys, Cadillacs for everyone. So inequity is really a problem. We got to make sure we address inequity. I think all kids should get the same treatment no matter where they live. And so let me address this issue that Catonsville gets everything. Well, I have the spreadsheets if anybody wants to look at them. I'm a numbers guy. I really do like math. And so Catonsville's getting, of the $317 million, Catonsville's getting $74 million, $317 million. North of 40 is getting over $90 million. So this community, Woodlawn High School, for example, this community, Chadwick, this community, we're getting a lot of money here. And I'm glad we are. We got to keep fighting for more. So I'm very proud of the fact that we have $317 million coming into Southwest Baltimore County. There's a lot of positive stuff going on here, and I'm running because I want to continue that progress. We made a lot of progress, but we have more to go. Economic development, I completely disagree with my Republican opponent saying economic development is not happening here. That's the farthest thing from the truth. Everybody take a look at Kaiser Permanente. Over $100 million in Lansdowne. $100 million investment in Lansdowne. Guinness, over $50 million in Relay. Heavy Seas is expanding tremendously in this area. Frederick Road is about to be majorly revitalized with the Friendly's restaurant that has a new owner, with Plymouth Wallpaper that has a new owner. Arbutus is starting to come up. UMBC is located a nice place in Arbutus, so we're working hard in Arbutus. Security Square Mall. I'm working with a major investor that wants to revitalize all of Security Square Mall and has the plans to do, by the way. A billionaire that wants to revitalize Security Square Mall has the plans. We're just trying to get all 5 owners to agree, which is difficult, but it's not that we don't have the money. We have the money, we have the investor, we need to get the owners together, and I'm working on that. Fiscal responsibility. I chair the Spending Affordability Committee. I watch every single dollar. Hardly nobody in the community knows the budget or the capital budget better than I do. There's a few, but not too many. Environment, I challenge anyone on a debate on the environment. I have a very strong environmental record. I passed the Western Bike Plan. I passed the Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I've downzoned hundreds of acres by the park. I've worked with great groups like Neighbor Space. I see my friend Klaus Philipson in the back. We work really closely together. Patapsco Heritage Greenway. I work together closely with Councilman John Weinstein. We're working on a big plan for the parks right now. Catonsville Rails to Trails. I love Catonsville Rails to Trails. We help with the short line. Public safety. I think a theme that I've heard over and over and over, which I completely agree, is opioids is a big problem. A big problem not only in the county, in the state, in the nation. And so we worked together with Wilkins Police and Community Relations Organization, brought together the community in Arbutus, had a really good public meeting. And a lot of people came because it's a big issue. We set up a task force to review all the actions the county's taken. What can we do differently working together, not only with other counties, but the country as well. And I'm very active communication with Captain the Wilkins and Woodlawn Precinct. Just recently at Lansdowne High School, we had a problem with some kid on Snapchat putting some pictures out there, really scaring a lot of parents. I was immediately on the phone with the chief of police. We were working through that issue. The following morning, we had police everywhere, and there were a lot more investigations. So, this is not something that I do, 10%. This is something I do 100% all the time. And I challenge anybody to discuss any of this record, because this record's really good. We've come a long way, and I want to make sure we continue that progress. Thank you so much.
Thanks, One question. I heard you talk about the bike zones and parks. Can you extend a little bit more back to a question I asked earlier about the children and youth outside of public education, outside of the schools? Can you expand on how these types of things and what that will do to actually help support services and additional things for students to do outside of school time?
Yeah, I think it's so important that we continue to engage our kids. And what better way than the parks? I mean, Southwest Baltimore County is really lucky because we have the Patapsco State Park right in our backyard. Literally, many of us can just take a bike right down the street and be in the parks. And so I think engaging our kids in lots of different programs and activities, especially programs and activities where they interface with the police and they see police out on the streets. They get to know them as trusted friends and people they can talk to when there's problems. And I also think that we need to do more with our community centers. One thing that's high up on my priority list is the old Catonsville Elementary, not the new one, but the old one that's now an administrative building, is to eventually find enough money where we can make sure we have more community centers and activities going in that building. It's actually a fairly big price tag, but I'll be working with our next county executive on that when money becomes more available. We're pretty tight in the fiscal budget right now, but I also think if you look at Crosby and Rolling, I would love to see a more expanded community center, by Enrico. That's another place I would love to see one, because I would love to see basketball courts, indoor basketball courts. So that's another thing that's high up on my party list. So I'm running because there's so many things that I haven't accomplished yet. We've come a long, long way, believe me. But there's so many things we haven't accomplished yet that are on my to-do list. You know, I know I can make it happen. So that's a great question. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, we're ready to move on. Miss Stephanie Boston. Nope.
You still have some county.
I'm maybe guessing the name. I don't have their names. Did they respond?
Surprise, surprise.
Okay, thank you, Miss Stephanie. Great. Is there another delegate, Mr.? Okay.
My name's Derek Burnett. Do I have to sit down?
You don't have to.
I love standing up talking.
I have to start after the back then.
Okay. I'm surprised. I just registered to run for the 4th council manager district in Baltimore County like 2 hours ago. My name is Derek Burnett. I wasn't born here, but I was bred here. I'm a graduate of Woodlawn Senior High School. I'm a graduate of Kingsville Community College. I'm a graduate of Hampton University. I lived in the community for over 40 years. All right, back and forth. My mother worked at Social Security. My father was retired military. Okay? I got a degree in architectural engineering from Hampton University. I have a certificate for real estate development from Johns Hopkins. I've been involved with many activities with the kids in the community for at least 20 years. I've acted as a basketball coach, football coach, baseball coach, a volleyball coach, a tennis coach. I've pretty much done it all. And I say that to say, I have 2 kids. One has his MBA. He lives in Charlotte, MBA in finance. My daughter is a senior at Johnson C. Smith in Charlotte. It's a blessing they're both in the same place. She was on a volleyball and tennis scholarship. She played 2 sports in college. All right. So I spent a lot of time in the community, on the fields, on the courts. I've seen a lot of things happen around me. But I've always been involved with the community. I honestly felt like Baltimore County was behind. And I'm going to say that realistically because I actually designed a football stadium right behind the school over here over 15 years ago. As a graduate of Woodlawn Senior High School, I interacted with the athletic director, who was a Woodlawn Senior graduate, and a warrior, exactly. And we made it happen. And that culminated and cultivated into us repeating that process at Milford Mill, at Randallstown, and eventually, I can say I sold the rights, but I did the conceptual design for Owings Mills as well. So when I was in high school, we was having football games, and the kids and the parents was coming with folded chairs to get to the game, right? Now for the last 10 years, they actually have Friday night lights here in Baltimore County. I mean, it'll be 15 years this year, actually 15 years, Friday night lights in Baltimore County. But realistically, how many of y'all saw the movie Friday Night Lights? Raise your hand. Nobody saw the movie Friday Night Lights?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. That happened in Virginia 50 years ago. So why wasn't it happening in Baltimore County? I don't understand that. We're behind recreation-wise, okay? I like to do a lot of things as it relates to education. I'm big on education because I was an athlete, but I was a student athlete. That's why I was an architect, okay? I did my homework. I did what I had to do to perform on a college level, all right? And I saw the importance in that. So that's why I participated as coaches at kids anywhere from 5 years old to 18 years old. I know I put at least 8 to 10 kids into college on the baseball side, and about the same number on the basketball side. But I always enforced and recommended academic excellence. continuing along that vein, I think we got to reconnect to our kids. Seems like the adults, I hear everybody say they want to put basketball courts up. They want to put basketball courts up. But then when you go to the community don't want basketball courts up. Now that's a shame. You don't want a kid to have a place to recreate, to interact, to develop social skills with kids of his age or even older. When I was growing up, you played against the big boys. That's how you knew you could play. Now you got power centers where they got you dictated and regulated based on your age. If you're not 10 years old, you can't play from 8 to 10. If you're not 12 years old, you can't play from 12 to 2. So how these kids gonna know if they really can play? How they gonna be able to relate to anybody in the real world? That doesn't happen. That's basically a police state in disguise. You know, realistically, we might the basketball court. You had a low percentage of guys that weren't doing the right thing. But the bottom line was, the police knew where they were. The police would come sit up on the hill. If you're looking for somebody, all you do is wait 10, 15 minutes, he coming through the basketball court. You're gonna find him. Now the kids don't have nothing to do, and you get kids choked out by neighbors because they knocking on the door because they ain't got nothing to do. They knocking on doors and running. That's nonsense. As community members, we got to be able to communicate with our kids. You can't be afraid of a child. People say, "Oh, you ain't afraid because you 6'4". That doesn't mean anything. I'll give you a prime example. 2 weeks ago, I had to put some oil in my car. I seen 5 kids standing outside of a Family Dollar, just hanging around the mall. I ain't say nothing to them when I went in. I got my oil, I came out. They had moved down to the pizza place. All right? I called them all. I said, "My man, fellas, come here." They looked at me like I was crazy. "Come here." I opened my hood. I asked them, "How many of you guys know how to put oil in your car?" I was communicating with them. Only one raised his hand. Okay? The other 4 didn't have a clue. They were 15, 16, 17 years old. Don't know how to put oil in the car. All right? So the kid that knew, I said, "Okay, well, find my oil cap." All right? He looked around. "Oh, yeah, I helped my father do this." That's an issue. Maybe those other 4 kids didn't have a father in their life. That's one of the main reasons I mentor. That's one of the main reasons I coach. Because I might be the only male image this young man sees during the course of a season, or of course, I ain't gonna say of his lifetime, or over a period of time. So that's why I spend so much time on the fields and in the courts. All right? So that's it.
Okay, and I get to ask you one question.
Sure, sir.
You're a new candidate just came on. What's the first thing you're gonna do if you're elected into your role?
Listen.
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 Great. Okay, thank you, sir. Before I move forward, any other candidates in this category? Nope?
I'm running for delegate in District 12. I'm not on your.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay. All right, next, Ms. Stephanie Boston, State Senator. Yes. Thank you, Ms. Boston. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Good evening. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me. My name is Stephanie Boston, and I am a candidate for State Senate in District 10. That's what I'm saying.
Why are you running?
Why am I running? First, a little bit about myself. I am a widow. I have 3 children. All 3 of them have been in a combination of private schools and public schools. Both my sons graduated from Catonsville High, and my daughter is currently at Franklin High right now as a sophomore. I'm an educator, 27 years, former educator of 27 years. Worked in the city, the county, and for the Department of Juvenile Services. And why am I running? We had someone earlier talk about not being satisfied with our government, not being happy with our communities. And why? Why aren't we happy with that? Or why am I not happy with that? One of the things that I know is that what is being told to us is not completely true. And we've been given half-truths. And I want to, how can we solve problems if we do not be honest and acknowledge those problems? And so when we talk about our schools, I'll be the first one to say I have been in schools where I've got the morning sun, the afternoon sun, and it was hot. Where I pulled the shades and I brought in extra fans and there was no air conditioning. But guess what? We got through it. Air conditionings are great. Brick and mortar, nice, pretty buildings are great. But what about our educational programs? And we need to seriously look at our educational programs. I asked the county executive, the current one now, how can you taunt a 90% graduation rate when our state assessments say the current high school here, Woodlawn High, they only had 9% pass the state test. So how can you get 90% out of this school? And I've heard it over and over again about our programs. One of the reasons why Amazon didn't make their headquarters in the Baltimore area, we don't have a skilled labor force. And so if we're passing our children on and passing them through just to get through the curriculum, how are we preparing them for the real world and what's out there? And so we really need to start addressing our educational programs in our schools. And something else that I would like for the citizens of the 10th district, which is a combination of the 1st and the 4th councilmanic district, 80% of all African Americans live between Route 40 and Reisterstown Road. What does that look like? What does that look like in terms of lack of resources, poor performing schools, lack of entertainment, lack of small business development, just development, period? We have all the social ills that are in the state are in this district. We have homelessness. One of the biggest problems that we have, not just women and children homelessness, but we have a large majority of men who are homeless. And if you think it's difficult for women and children to be homeless, it's a nightmare for men because there aren't, if none, very few resources for men who are homeless. Our lack of transportation. We do have public transportation. However, I know that we have people in our district that have to catch a cab to Owens Mills Station to catch the subway, then get downtown. Or it is ridiculous on our lack of public transportation. And so we talk about jobs, jobs, jobs. I heard someone earlier talking about the development on the east side and the jobs on the east side, but if you live on the west side, it's going to take you a good couple hours to get to the east side to a job. And so we really need to start looking into that. In District 10, we have 3 distinguished economic areas. We have the Security Woodlawn area, we have the Liberty Road corridor, and then we have the Reisterstown area. And so with the resources that are out there, why isn't our area, the Liberty Road corridor, developed? Why is it that we have to leave our district and go to different areas to shop and to go out to dinner, to go to a movie, and to entertain? We also we've heard of the lack of recreation. we talk about our children and our children are our future and how important our children are. But when you look at what we have invested in our children, that's very poor. And so when I talk about serving, because again, I was an educator and I served and I worked hard. I enjoyed my students, but there's no more joy in teaching because we're lying to our students. I know I was a math teacher. I could fail a student. I'm sorry, I didn't fail. The students didn't pass my class, but yet and still, the administration would pass them on. And I know they weren't ready. And it's heartbreaking to know that we're passing our students on because of the alternative high school graduation program, as the kids call it, the bridge program. And they're not ready. So I'll stop right there because I could go on and on.
So, Ms. Boston,
Monies sold into reading programs. If you listen to people, they're not talking to teachers. You hear about the union, and they talk to the unions, and they talk to everyone except the teachers who are on the front lines. If you ask a teacher why the children aren't performing, why the students are performing poorly, they will tell you they cannot read. And so, what would I do? I would love to, the teachers have already identified the low-performing readers. They've already identified the low-performing readers. And so we need to have after-school programs, and we also need to have summer programs. But by third grade, if our children are not reading, and I know a lot of you have heard this, if your child is not reading by third grade, the reading test is a predictor of prison days by the third grade. And so Baltimore City used to have a program, Reading by 9. What are we doing? What are we doing to make sure that our children are not statistics?
thank you very much. Next we have Miss Alethea McCaskill.
Well, good evening, everyone. I am just feeling really great to be here. This is amazing for it to be lobby night. Look at here. Nonetheless, I am Alethea McCaskill, and I am running for state senate for the 44th district. And so the 44th district is a dynamic district because it represents Baltimore City, which is 44A, and Baltimore County, 44B. So the district, if any are unfamiliar, runs from the top of Route 40 near the Howard County line in Ellicott City, all the way new and through Catonsville and Woodlawn and Windsor, all the way down to Sandtown. So, who am I briefly? Well, I am an educator. I am a family child care provider for the past 20 years this coming May. I have been successful at that. But before that, I was a computer science programmer. I graduated from the then Villa Julie, now Stevenson, Stevenson University. And I decided I'm going to become a computer science major. But in doing that, I was disconnected from the people. I helped many people. We designed programs, absolutely. But I became disconnected, and I felt it. And so I went back to school, got my degree in education, and I'm currently in school again, getting my degree in education, because it's a continuous process for me. So many people said, I work for Hopkins Medicine. They said, Alethea McCaskill, you are absolutely crazy to leave your $10 million job here at Hopkins to go and work with children. You will fail. I am 20 years later still here. And the reason being because it wasn't a money thing for me, it was community service. So what have I been doing? I do not like to brag on anything that I do, but God forgive me for this because this is the platform that I'm on. So I have been an advocate with WESA, which is the Women's Economic Security Agenda, which covers pay equity and paid sick leave. Yes, I am a national fighter for the Fight for 15. I have been all over this country. I believe in minimum wage raise in increments by indexing. I think it's very important. We ought to be ashamed of ourselves. Nonetheless, I have been able to be honored to work with the Women's Law Center and sit with their advisory on many women's issues. But I know that running for the 44th is not just the 44th issue. You see, the geographics are great from up in 40 all the way down to Sandtown. But the concerns are still the same. Housing and the lack thereof, education and the lack thereof, public safety and the lack thereof, recreation and the lack thereof. So what I will say is, Alethea, why are you running? Well, I too am sick and tired of being sick and tired. I have lived in this 44th district for almost 25 years, and I have seen hardly no growth, stagnant at best, I must say. I own my home in the 44th. I've raised my children in the 44th. I have my business in the 44th. What I've had to do with my children time after time is get them on special transfers because the schools in this area just weren't equipped. I kept them in Baltimore County schools, yes I did, but I had to have my children bused all over town so that they can have the proper education that they need. Alethea, why are you running for the 44th? Well, I'm going to say it again. Some of you have heard me say it. It's not about running the race against the elderly because I've heard that, and I'm sick and tired of being accused of that. It's far from that. My grandmother is almost 100. My dad almost lived to 90. God knows I love the elderly. Part of my fight is from the elderly down to the youth. I am running because this district, 44, from the city to the county, has lacked leadership. I have lived here 25 years, and I have seen hardly no growth. I do not like having to go to Montgomery County to be entertained in their entertainment zone. I do not like having to go to Columbia Mall to shop. I do not like to have to worry about if our cars break down, that we don't have equitable transportation to get us to and fro. I get tired of hearing our elderly just be afraid and live in fear. That should not be, not for our elderly, those whose shoulders we have stood on, because they live in their homes and they have to go because they can't afford to stay there. Now, I've heard some of our speakers thus far propose some issues and some great things are happening. Well, here's the problem with that. Well, I've heard over the past 25 years great things supposed to be happening. And so, well, why am I here? To hold myself to the fire, to hold our constituents at county council to the fire. And like I said, the 44th represents the city. Let's not forget about them because we may be worried about potholes up in Ellicott City, but Baltimore City is worried about how to survive. So what have I been doing? I have been listening. Thank you. Listening, because what I thought was supposed to be my platform when I started, God knows it has changed. And I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. My one question for you is, can you share with us what steps would you go about to ensure there is equity in each school so that no matter where you transfer your child to, they'll have equity in programming and the infrastructure of that building?
Well, thank you for asking that. Well, not to be repetitive of what anyone else have already said, one thing we definitely need to have is relationship. We need to have relationship across the board, because what happens in 44 happens all over the state. We need to have relationship with the county council and the Board of Education, and we need to not sit in Annapolis, amen. And then when Annapolis is over and legislative session has ended, we need to come back into the communities, we need to listen, and we need to form a formula. We need to sit down across the table just like this. This is like the Last Supper. I love it. And we need to listen to each person and say, okay, well, what are your concerns? And we need to take that time. So we need to have a listening sessions. We need to keep our constituents up to date on what's going on. I half the time don't know what's going on if I don't go to Annapolis myself. So we need to make sure that we have communication, we need to make sure that we're listening, and we need to make sure that we have relationships with others so that we can figure out, listen, I can't do this job myself. Nobody in here can do their job by themselves. You need to be able to listen and understand what's going on and be like a yoga person, like be flexible. Don't just get stuck in your rut.
Thank you, Ms. McCaskill. Next, we'll have Mr. Lawrence Williams. Welcome.
Thank you, thank you.
Why don't you introduce yourself, Mr. Williams? Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and why you're running for your position.
Not sure we have that long of a time, but I'll try.
7 minutes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. Thank you so very, very much for taking the time out this evening to come out to hear what we have to say. It's not always easy on a Monday after you finish your day's job to come out, but at least we're given the onus and recognizing that this is important. My name is Lawrence Williams, and I'm running for State Senator in the 10th District. I'm originally from Wilmington, North Carolina. Been in Maryland close to 30 years now. Came here after I graduated from North Carolina Central University, came here to teach. Started teaching right there at Woodlawn Middle School. And if anyone that's ever taught will understand that if you can teach in middle school, you can teach at any level. Middle school is a real special place. So, for the last 27 years, and currently, I'm still in education. After being a teacher at Woodlawn Middle School, I was a dean at Randallstown High School. I was administrator at Lock Raven High School, administrator at Milford, as well as Randallstown, and currently I'm the assistant principal at Dunbar High School in Baltimore City. So, that question about why am I running, I could sit here and talk about all these other things and talk about them well as everyone did. We can talk about education, and I'm as well adapted to talk about education as anyone, because on a daily basis, I go into a school every single day. Sit here and we can talk about the economics. We can sit here and we can talk about the potholes, the issues. That's not totally all of my reasons that I'm running, to be totally honest, and that's the only way that I really know how to be. I'm running because I'm tired. I'm running because the school that I was in last year was an all-boys school, and I buried 7 boys from August to May. When you bury children, something is wrong. Something is broken. No one wants to say it. Nobody wants to own up to it. We sit around and we tell our children they're going to bury us. That's not what's happening right now. That's the one thing that we are not prepared for in life, is to bury our children. So when you ask me why I'm running, that's one of the biggest reasons. I'm also running because we're not being honest. We have race issues and no one wants to say it. until you bring the bad to the forefront, you're not going to resolve it. As soon as we continue and always say that's not an issue, we're lying. We're lying. And if you don't struggle, you're not going to make any progress. So when you ask me why am I running, I'm running for the betterment of all people. I'm running for the betterment of the elderly. I'm running for the betterment of that age group that's being left out right now from 18 to 28. Why do I say they're being left out? Well, what happens is they graduate from high school. Well, they were not able to get into college, but they also don't have the skills to go out and get a well-paid job. So what do? We act like they don't exist. We leave them out there to fend for themselves. And everyone can read, can see the data, that 18 to 30, that's where the highest rate of crime is, unemployment. You can go across the board. And again, I'm not going to sit here and be redundant because everyone has said many things tonight. One of the other biggest reasons that I am running is because no matter win, lose, or draw, what I want to bring back to the people, it's time for candidates to earn your vote. It's time for people to stop voting just because that's who their neighbor voted for. It's time for them to stop voting because that's who I voted for last year. It's time to stop voting for people that don't know the issues. Make people earn your vote because that is your right. And so those are some of the issues, some of the platforms, again, that I could sit up here and talk about all night long. But those are the honest reasons. And when I spoke to my campaign manager, like I told him, anytime I go to speak to anyone, I only know to be honest. And those are the reasons. But again, you take the education. Education is really the key to everything. Maybe I'm biased because, yes, I am an educator. Maybe I'm biased because I still believe totally in education. Yes, I'm biased because I do believe that is the greatest job because on a daily basis, you get a chance to change a child's life. And when you change children's lives, you change society lives. No other job has that opportunity to make change like education does. So if we don't have good education, you're not going to have good jobs. You're not going to have good roads. You're not going to have good doctors. Whatever it is that you want, you're not going to have. You don't have good education. Education is where everything starts. And to me right now, the system is a little broken. And I sit around and I fuss every day. And there are many reasons why. We can sit around and we can go over. And someone even asked me today, said, Mr. Webb, you had an opportunity. What would you do? I said, well, I would put all my resources back into preschool and elementary. And I know people don't want to hear that, but I'm one of these people who believe that until you go all the way back and fix the problem and stop putting Band-Aids on everything, you're not going to resolve the issue. So again, ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to hold it with that. My name is Lawrence Williams, State Senate District 10 candidate. Those are the reasons why I'm running, and I thank you for your time.
Would you like to take a question?
Absolutely.
Mr. Williams, you discussed the lack of honesty about various issues, including race. Can you share with us how you plan to bring these issues to the forefront? How would you go about bringing them to the forefront to seek resolution?
Please do.
When you talk about race, people want to cringe. When you talk about how you're going to change race, because to me, not liking or hating someone because of race is actually hate. And the way you change hate is by love. You go back to these babies, to these children, and you teach them the proper way. And you also teach them, even though someone may not look like you, and they may think different than you, that's okay, because they have the right to think or to choose things that they want to. But that doesn't mean they're better than you, and you should not dislike or hate someone simply because of the race of their skin. We, in the system, we're going to have to go back and we're going to have to introduce some morality, because the morals and the values which everyone in this room, if you took a poll of 100 people, you could have 100 different morals and different values. But somewhere along the line, you're going to have to bring people together and decide on some of these morals and values and teach them to our children and let them grow from there. So that's my opinion on how we resolve that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're moving to our next category. Did I get everyone in? Okay. Our next category for state delegate, Ms. Aisha Khan. Aisha, introduce yourself to us. Tell us a little about yourself, your position you're running from, and why you chose to run.
Thank you, Deborah. Good evening, everyone. My name is Aisha Khan, and I'm running for House of Delegate, District 44B. I'm a mother. I have 3 kids. My kids going to Baltimore County Public School, and I am a small business owner. I own and operate Child Care Learning Center in Catonsville. Well, why I'm running? Catonsville is my home, and I'm very thankful to Lord, whatever I got, and after that I am very thankful to communities and families. And I think this is the time to get better, because I am an average American, and I want to help the people of District 44B. And I do believe if we work together, we can make a change.
Thank you, Aisha.
Thank you.
A question for you.
Sure.
Tell us, how do you plan to work with the governor to do the best for the state of Maryland, regardless of politics, or will you follow just your party line?
I give you a very short answer for that. People over party. We should work together. It doesn't matter who is a governor, whatever, we should work together for people. So this is my right answer, people over party.
Great, thank you, Aisha.
Thank you.
And the next question, if you were elected, what would be the very first thing you would do, your first action?
Sure. I want to make an advisory committee, so that committee can work with different associations, homeowner associations, so that way I can, directly figure it out that exactly what problems going on and issues going on in the District 44B. That thing I would do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next candidate, Mr. Bennett. Barnett. Right.
Took them on purpose. Oh, boy.
Welcome, Mr. Barnett.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself. Tell us.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Aaron Barnett. I know many of you in this room already. The reason I'm running is because, as my motto in our campaign states, we want to put the people's agenda over politics. I've been a member of this community. I heard many people talking about Woodlawn High School, the area. I've been invested in this community for well over 40 years. I'm actually the president of Woodlawn High School's Alumni Association. I'm a current member of the Woodlawn Senior Center Advisory Board. I'm their community liaison for the seniors here in Woodlawn. I serve in many capacities throughout the Liberty World Corridor, and anybody that knows me in this room knows that I service and have committed to service throughout the entire time I've been here. I'm Vice President of Recreation and Parks Council. I've coached high school, elementary, junior high. I heard mention of mentoring, education, and a lot of things that were mentioned in this room. But the main reason I'm running is because about 4 years ago when the whole redistricting process took place. Before that, I supported all of the legislators in this district, in District 10 before it was broken up in this district, and they made Woodlawn and Catonsville a district. When they made Woodlawn and Catonsville a district, they made my backyard a district. And I felt like it would be incumbent on me to step up and represent the people of our community and the interest of our community. One of the things we talked about, and I heard them talking about the young people in our community, I started a mentoring program for boys in our community, ages 8 through 18. And I've been in several meetings with local educators throughout the high school. In fact, I got a meeting with the principal here tomorrow regarding extending vocational and electives that are lacking at Woodlawn High School. And we're meeting with the principal and the student government because, you know, the kids have a lot to say about their education. A lot of people aren't listening to them, you know, and that's what we want. We want direct involvement. And I've noticed over the years, because I'm not an educator, there's a lot of politics in the Baltimore County education system. And a lot of teachers' hands are tied. And, you know, when you talk to them one-on-one, they'll tell you what their needs are. So, you know, as a legislator, I would like to put legislation in place that will assist them with their tools that they need. They need, and I've seen that we have children, some of the children that have come through my mentoring program are autistic. They have special needs, and I've gone now, worked in the elementary school, like I say, the middle and the high schools here, and I see where the lack of funding and resources are not giving these children the needs that they need, and they really, really need a lot of special attention. We're directing and we're diverting funds all over the state of Maryland, but right here in my backyard, the first thing I heard, and I heard a lot of people say, I'm tired. Yeah, well, you know, I'm running because I care. You know, and that's the thing that, you know, my mother asked me when I told her I was going to run for state delegate. She asked me and I lost my mind. You know, she said, seriously, have you lost your mind? You know, and if you look, and I'll leave some of my handouts here, you'll see that I'm also, I failed to mention that I'm a union leader. I'm a union labor leader for over 30 years, fighting for working men and women and families throughout the state of Maryland. I was formerly the vice president of the Port of Baltimore, where we're one of the largest economic engines in the state of Maryland, as many of you know. And we've been fighting issues of diversity and racism, and I heard that statement mentioned also, dealing with racial issues across America. We know that there's a racial divide. I mean, you know, being honest with one another, we have to sit down, and as a union leader, that's one of the things that we put on the table. We sat there and we had a meeting with all of our constituents in the union and said, you know, let's sit down, let's talk about the divide. Why are we divided racially? We have to talk about it. We have to be willing to openly and honestly sit down at the table and say we have a divide. Regardless of your political affiliations, you know, you have to come together with people. And I heard a question regarding how would you deal with the governor, regardless of which party is in power. We have to have bipartisan relationships. We have to be able to come together collectively to resolve the issues of the people and the concerns of the people. That's one of the reasons why I'm running. I heard my good friend over there and namesake, Derek Barnett. I'm Barnett, he's Barnett. Talking about listening. And that's the key. That's the key, you know. Every 4 years we get dream merchants, as I call them, the dream merchants. They come out, they sell us a bunch of dreams. And then, you know, 3-4 years later, the dreams that they sold us to get our votes. We're here again. Here we are again. You know, my voice is a little raspy because I'm just recovering from pneumonia. I've been running so much that I actually, my body set me down. And I was debating whether I was going to come tonight or not. But I told my son I would be here, who's right there at the door, to talk about it.
May I have your attention, please? Doorbell will be closing in 30 minutes at 8 o'clock. The video game systems will also be shut down at 8. Thank you.
All right, well, I was just stating that. Time is almost up. I was just stating the young man at the door there, that's my campaign manager and my son, who just served 2 terms. Give him a hand, overseas in the Army. I failed to mention that I'm also a Navy veteran. So I support services for veterans, homeless services, which 38% of the veterans that are here in the state of Maryland are homeless. And I heard her mentioning the male population, and that there's a lot of programming that veterans are in dire need of that we aren't paying attention to. So as a legislator and elected official, I would hope that collectively we could put some legislation in place that would help to address the needs of the people and the concerns of the people that we represent. But that's what we do. The people have forgotten, a lot of politicians have forgotten that they're elected by you, they're elected by us, they're elected by the people to represent us. Simple as that. And at the end of the day, if they don't do that, then, we got to stop putting go along to get along politicians in office. We got to put people in there that are going to address our needs and our concerns. And until we do that, we're going to keep getting, and you know the definition of insanity, right? If we do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, right? So, we don't want that. So thank you. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you, Mr. Barnett. We also have two candidates after this, so I will give you at least one question. After all the talking and dialogue has occurred with various constituents, what would your actual step be to move towards preventing the divides that we're seeing now within our communities?
Well, one thing, the communities at large, Jeff and Shirley, Derek, Dan, a lot of people that are here are community leaders. We have to get together and communicate with one another, with our elected officials. I know Councilman Quirk and, Councilman Jones, we've had them at several of our meetings to talk about things and issues and concerns of our community. So unless we have a collaborative effort, there's nothing going to be accomplished. So that's what the first thing I would do, because as a state legislator, you would have to support your county and your local legislature. It has to be a collaborative effort from the top down in order for it to be effective.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Okay, and we have two candidates that are here that are Board of Education candidates that are... Right, okay, here he is. Matt?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi.
Come on. And then we'll have chance for question and answers from the audience. Matt? Oh.
Thank you. Anything out of that? Chance.
Yes.
Take it. I was worried.
We have a few minutes left. If we can have our attention, Matt, why don't you introduce yourself to us and tell us your role you're running for and why you chose to.
Well, I'm the rookie.
Yeah.
My name is Matt Gressick. I'm currently a public school teacher in Howard County. And I don't know if any of you know this, but Baltimore County is the first ever elected Board of Ed in the history of your county. So you should be very proud of that, a people's voice in that office. I've been a public school teacher for now over 15 years. I started out in my internship. I wanted to test my commitment to education, and that's why I interned at inner city schools. And I also taught overseas in England at a parochial school. After that, I went to teach at middle school for 2.5 years, 6th grade at a Title I school. And then I went to high school, and then eventually, now I'm at a high school where I've taught all areas of social studies. I'm a social studies teacher. While teaching, I've accomplished many things. Mentor Teacher of the Year. I also have got my master's in curriculum and instruction. I'm a certified administrator as well. But the most important thing I want people to know is I'm going to stay a public educator while being on the board, which is important to know. And that gives me a sense of what's going on in the classroom, which is what really matters. Connecting with kids, engaging them in a real and meaningful way. And for me, it comes down to 3 elements that this candidacy is about. And that's trust, technology, and how do we assess that our schools are helping our kids in that next step. So first of all, starting with trust, to instill trust, I think you have to instill transparency, and that I want to be that person that questions and is also open about solutions to the problems that our schools are facing. As a teacher, I want to empower those teachers and trust those teachers to do their job. I like to call it weapons of mass distraction that we get in our email, where we get bombarded by all this stuff, and it's really not helping us reach those kids. The second thing is technology, which is a double-edged sword. We need to make sure that we create students that are technology innovators, but not addicts. As a father of a high schooler, I oftentimes have to take my son's phone and say, okay, it's time for detox. And even today, teaching my class, I had to take a phone from a student saying, this is getting in the way of you being successful. The last thing is, how do we assess that what we're doing is really helping our kids? Because I think we've become addicted to testing and standardized testing. We need to look at how those kids are doing on each level. How are our elementary schools preparing our kids for the middle schools? How are middle schools preparing those kids for the high schools? And then how are high schools preparing them for life? And then survey that. We could use analytics or some other kind of creative solution for that. There are more ways to measure our success than simple testing. Finally, I want you all to know that I'm a father. I'm a father of 3 beautiful children. My youngest son recently, I'm a history teacher, of course we're watching a history documentary. We're watching a documentary on redlining. And my son looked at me and said, Dad, are you going to do something about that? And I said, I'm going to try. I want all our kids to be successful in this place. Thank you.
Thank you, Dad. I'll defer questions since we still have.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, all right,
Thank
cool.
you.
All right, thank you.
And we have one more candidate, and then we'll have a few minutes for questions before they close the doors on us. Pete.
So, if Matt's a rookie, I'm a redshirt freshman. I have even less experience in politics than I am about to prove it. So my name is Pete Fitzpatrick, and I'm a candidate for Board of Education for First Council County District. And I first got involved with Baltimore County Public Schools in the fall of 1980, and I think Mrs. Rogers would probably be surprised to see that Auburn fat kid sitting here. And I graduated from Catonsville High School, and I assure you there's some teachers there that are probably more than alarmed. But I've since been involved as a parent. I have three kids, all have been in various public schools in Baltimore County for some of the needs that they have, but they couldn't get at their home schools. And then recently I got involved kind of from the backbench, I guess, with things like school overcrowding and redistricting in the Catonsville area, which became a bit of a mess as it got to implementation. And I thought to myself, if I'm gonna sit back there and criticize, I should put myself out there and give this a try. So at least if I'm going to criticize, have taken the opportunity to give it a shot. I think I have a few things that are important to me in education in Baltimore County. Transparency, I think, has become a big issue. is always important. Trying to be a participant in the education process in Baltimore County is often challenging in a lot of ways. Trying, not just to be heard, but to have those words, go into action is even more so. I feel like there's a need for, talked about equality or equity in education in Baltimore County with the Delaney High School and Lansdowne High School. I'm looking more for something along the lines of justice. I mean, because not all of our kids and all of our communities start at the same place, right? So, I don't want Lansdowne to have a high school because Delaney has a high school. I want Lansdowne to have a high school because they need a high school. And, it's not that I don't want Delaney to have a high school, but, there are definitely different challenges in those two communities. I think that we can agree. Like any other parent, I'm concerned about school safety. And, I'm concerned about listening to, knowing what's going on in the classroom. I'm a nurse and a paramedic. I work on a pediatric transport team. And something I can tell you in that world, the best quality of care, the best outcomes are always attained when the people on the line are listened to, right? So when they, when my boss hears me say, I can't do my job without this. Well, I got one brother who's a teacher, and I got another brother who's a parole officer. Right? Yeah, so I want to give my brother who's a teacher the things that he needs, so these kids aren't, talking to my other brother. That's
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Let's give all the candidates a round. We have one more here. Great, how are you? So we are going to take one more, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Talk to the candidates.
He's here? Oh,
Okay.
have a seat, sir.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes, each candidate had an opportunity to introduce themselves.
Okay.
Tell a little bit about yourself while you're returning.
Okay.
Or running again for your role.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Hi, I'm Councilman Julian Jones. I'm actually the chair of the Baltimore County Council. And it is my honor and privilege to be here. It's always good to see civic engagement, see people here checking the candidates out. I was born and raised in East Baltimore, grew up to a middle-class family. Mother taught school for 36 years. My father was in Bethlehem Steel for 43 years. Went to the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, where I received a Bachelor of Science degree in Information Systems. I joined the fire department in 1985. I actually moved here in this community in 1985. And ran for office the first time, came up short by 98 votes, came back again and won in 2014. So I've been at council since 2014. What are some major accomplishments that I think that are important that I contributed to here in the Woodlawn area? Starting with the Woodlawn Bridge. The Woodlawn Bridge was removed prior to me taking office, and one of the first things that happened when I took office, people said, you know, the bridge is gone, and there was a lot of confusion, and I realized what the bridge, you know, how important the bridge was to the community, and I made a pledge at that time that I would do everything in my power to replace the bridge. So if anyone's been paying attention, we made an announcement a couple of days ago that the bridge is going to be replaced this year at the tune of some $400,000. Emmett Burns came to me when I first took office and said it was very important that he wanted to widen and put some sidewalks and curbs and gutters on Windsor Mill Road. That was my top priority that budget year. He and I both went to the county executive. I explained to the county executive how important it was to our community, and we were able to secure funding to widen Windsor Mill Road from Woodlawn Drive up to the first leg will take us up to Featherbed Lane, then the second leg will take us all the way up to the Grimpy. That's just a few of the accomplishments that I was involved in here. Of course, we are about to embark on a $60–70 million renovation of Woodlawn High School. But to make a long story short, not to take too much time, I've worked very hard since I was elected to councilman. I worked very hard every day to make sure that everything I did brought nothing but the utmost respect to our community. And I worked hard each and every day. I put out a yearly report with the literally hundreds and hundreds of constituent calls that we take care of. And this year I was elected the first African-American chairman of the Baltimore County Council. I did that by working well with my colleagues and providing the type of leadership for our community that everybody can be proud of. So I stand very strong with my record, everything I've done for the community, and all the causes that I've championed throughout the community. And I can go on and on and on in terms of whether it be protecting our community from the influx of too many Section 8 houses, whether it be working to make sure the Universal Soul Circus return to Security Boulevard. But you name it, that it's not many things that take place in our community, especially in Baltimore County, that I have not been involved in. Most people know that I'm a strong supporter for Lita White. I went to the school board several occasions to ask them to please appoint her. I've been on the news saying those things. So I've made it my business to make sure that our community was well represented and well heard on all the important matters that take place here in Baltimore County. So with your support, I look forward to it. I will be returning to Towson, and I certainly hope you all will consider returning. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and God bless all. Thank you so much.
Very welcome. And we have one more candidate. I think it's important, at least you see all the candidates, and whatever time is left, we will then do for questions. Mr. George White.
Oh, yes. Good evening, everyone. I won't take up much time. My name is George White. I'm running for the Democratic Central Committee in District 44, 44B. Since the age of 12, I've been part of the process. As they mentioned earlier, these districts have, before they draw these lines, we started in Baltimore City. We began to, our parents taught us, and we began to work in the background since the age of 12, and then gradually I moved through the city, out here in the county. I've been out here now about 25 years. I've always supported candidates that were running. From everybody that's always run, I've always been behind the scenes. And eventually you get kind of tired of saying they ought to do something. So on my 65th birthday, September the 1st, I went and I registered to become they. So now I'm out here running. Also, I found out during running, we find that the Central Democratic Committee, if you guys have been voting on that for years, but I think a lot of folks don't really realize what we do in the Democratic Central Committee. They call us the worker bees. We are the worker bees. We are the glue in the community between the community and the politicians. A lot of times our elected officials, which we are elected to, but the ones at the top, they go to Annapolis, and sometimes they kind of forget about us in the trenches. So the Central Committee, we are the backbones, and we are the glue between the community, and I take issues back to our elected officials. But over the years, a lot of the politicians have been running dual seats. That means they've been running for their Senate or the delegate seats, and they've been running for the Central Committee seats as well, which is really unfair because there's nobody groomed to kind of move through the ranks. That's why it's a stagnant in there. When something happens, you don't know the next leader that's coming up because, for the lack of a better explanation, is like our leaders, they want to drive the bus and they want to see that's a passenger on the same bus, which is not fair because they aren't grooming us to move through the ranks. So I decided to put my name in the race, and a couple of years ago, my wife and I, we always have been community activists. Okay, so about 2 years ago, we started a ministry called Connect the Dots, and we connect people in the community with stuff. So every other day, I pick up about $1,000 worth of bread from Panera Bread, and I deliver it to homeless shelters, food pantries, from the county through the city. I'm a retired military person. I wind up, most of you guys have heard of Big Vets downtown. It's a housing building for veterans. They house 189 vets in the building. 89 of them are females, 100 are males. But I start with our delivery of bread out here and desserts. Matter of fact, my vehicle smells like a baby. I deliver it. But anyway, I want to continue those activities. What I had to do as a Democratic...
May I have your attention, please? Storyville will be closing in 10 minutes at 8 o'clock. Thank you again.
Thank you, everyone. You heard the announcements. We have exactly 10 minutes. And this particular forum is specifically for District 1 candidates. I know there's some other candidates in the room, but we've been asked to keep it to District 1 and to take these last few minutes before we all have to go out to see if there are any questions that someone may have. Now, we know we won't be able to take everyone, okay? But let's try to be very specific.
Opioids, we had about 125 people pack the Arbutus Library. In addition, between Margaret Stokes and Kathy Ingers and between Pete Prescumas, no one, absolutely no one can say we're not out in the community 24/7. Believe me, the one thing I know, people know who Margaret Stokes is. They know Kathy Ingers, they know Pete Prescumas. I go to dozens and dozens of meetings all the time. And community meetings, community association meetings, political meetings, there's hundreds and hundreds of meetings that happen every year. So to suggest otherwise is just wrong. In regard to business, I do believe that we have to work with business because a lot of the loans that happen are what's called conditional loans. So if If they stimulate enough jobs, and the jobs are brought in, conditioned on that, then it helps provide a tax base, because jobs bring in a tax base. If we want schools and if we want government programs, well, guess what? We have to pay for them. How do we pay for them? Property taxes, income taxes. Where do income taxes and property taxes come from? Jobs. So it's really, really important that we work in conditional loans, bring in different businesses that are going to bring more jobs to the area. That's precisely how we're going to pay for education. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Young lady,
I just wanted to mention that the library doesn't close at 8, only story buildings. So if you want it to end, it can end. I just wanted to make sure you know.
thank you.
I'd like to hear from.
I'd like to hear from the other hand, 3 women tonight.
Okay. But they were the ones who raised their hand first, so I'm going
I
to
was
let.
behind you, you missed me.
And let me finish with the young lady behind. Did you not have
That's
any
all I
other
wanted
questions?
to say.
Okay, thank you. All right, you want to
I
reply?
just wanted to hear from
Sure.
Sheila.
This is a really difficult issue, and this is one where, as an activist, I would be sitting with you demanding the same thing. But as a potential council person, I would have to represent everybody in the district, and it's a difficult issue. And I think, you know, in making these kind of decisions, you have to weigh the benefits versus the potential harm to the community. There's definitely benefits from this in terms of jobs. The harm is, you know, allowing a media outlet that may not actually be a media outlet, that's more propaganda, to have a greater foothold in our county. You know, but then I look at it and I say, what if it were a left-wing media outlet? And I'm very strongly left. And, you know, I could see how there would be people upset about that as well. So the bottom line is I don't know the answer. I think it's something that bears a lot more thought. You know, maybe the answer is that we shouldn't be giving money to any media outlets because people's tax dollars shouldn't be used to support, you know, any kind of potential ideology that they may not agree with. I don't know if that's the answer, but it's definitely something I would look into.
Thank you, Ms. Ruth. Gentleman in the hat.
My name's Shorty. I'm an activist.
Shorty, can I give you this?
I can speak loud. They hear me.
All right.
My name's Shorty. I'm a community activist. My activism is homelessness and prisoners' right advocacy. In this room, our elected officials for the last 20 years do not deal with criminal justice. Your crime plan is lock up, lock up, lock up. When you closed the housing in Baltimore City and you gave vouchers to Baltimore County, you built your Baltimore County prison industry. My question is, what are my elected officials, Mr. Julian, Mr. Kirk, the ones that are sitting in office and been sitting in office, going to do about race and racism in 2018? Because you treating it like an autistic child and you're keeping it in the attic, and you're not addressing it.
Thank you, sir, for your question.
I'm
I'll start with
answer.
Mr. Jones, and then I'll come to Mr. Quirk. Yes, sir.
I'm not 100% sure what to do about racism.
Talk about it.
Well,
Yeah.
that's an issue that is old as all of us here and clearly as old as this country.
And it
I
exists.
certainly don't condone it. I don't approve of it. And I work very hard with everyone I come in contact with to make sure that I don't see it. When I do see it, I act upon it. Whenever it's within my privilege. Whenever it's something that I have an opportunity to do. I don't know what else. Real quickly, I voted for the St. Clair Broadcasting. At the same time, we voted for Black and Decker. I don't approve of what St. Clair Broadcasting is about. I do recognize that, unfortunately,
That was not the question.
The library
will close at 9 o'clock. Thank you.
You know, our vote would have stopped the $1.3 million from coming to somebody who promises to hire 324 people. And, you know, that's important. Those 324 people won't care whether or not St. Clair Broadcasting is on the right or the left. They're looking for a job to feed their family.
Wait, please, we're not gonna, we have to, and Mr. Quirk can respond.
Y'all gotta answer my question. Y'all still on my question.
See, there's just two people you asked.
I don't know if Councilwoman Almond wants to say something or not, Joe. I'll tell you what, racism, if anybody says it doesn't, we don't have issues, then they're just not paying attention. Because clearly there's issues between people for many different reasons. And what I try to do as a council person is really go and talk to people very directly. For example, in the Muslim community, I can't even tell you how many mosques I've been to in the last 8 years. When President Obama came, I had the privilege and honor of being there along with all my Muslim friends. I have many, many friends in the Muslim community, strong partnerships. We work hand in hand. When there's a flare-up, we make sure we have the local police, watching everything, make sure there's no issues. In the African American community, me and Julian Jones, we work super closely together. Kenny with Shirley Nathan Pulley, with the whole team, we really work together. We communicate. When we have an issue at Woodlawn, for example, we have 2 votes for Woodlawn. We have Julian Jones and myself. 99.8% of the time, Julie and I are voting together. Right here. And so I believe the only way we overcome racism is we literally talk face to face, eye to eye, and make sure that we're working hand in hand. And that's my pledge to everybody in this room. We do it in Baltimore County. We definitely work together. We talk together. I don't know if Councilwoman Allman want to say anything?
Just thank you. I think it's about building relationships, about listening and talking. In touring Baltimore County, my run for the county executive, I've met so many incredible people from incredible walks of life, and I feel privileged to have done so. I think that says it all.
Thank you. I'm taking 2 more. Young lady here, hand has been up, and then this gentleman here, and you'll be the last one, ma'am. Okay, yes,
This
ma'am.
question is directed to those on the county council and running for county council and running for county executive, since they hold the purse strings to the county. I'm curious to know what their opinion of the STAT program is in the Baltimore County Public School System. Over $200 million so far, and by next year, every single student, 1 through 12, will have their own device, with very little evidence so far of its success, and a lot of anecdotal evidence from parents and teachers that is a major distraction to the students and their learning.
Do you have a specific candidate? There's several people, so why don't you identify maybe at least 2 that you'd like to
Except for
respond?
Johnny O, since he's standing in the corner here.
Sure. Look, I think it's a misplaced priority. And when we talk about our needs of our kids, it has to be Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When we have kids who aren't in safe, comfortable learning environments, we shouldn't be investing hundreds of millions of dollars in a program that, as you pointed out, is questionable in its success. As county executive, I'll commit to make sure those dollars are invested where it matters most. We had this fight about Lansdowne and Delaney. I think it's actually closer to $300 million. You take that money and the 50-50 match we give the state for school construction, that's $600 million on the table that we could have done to invest in our kids in different ways, in the school infrastructure, and teachers, and school counselors, the things that we know that work. I actually... I have that effect on people. I have that effect on people. I'm all for appropriate use of technology in the classroom as a teacher, but I don't think first graders, and certainly in the earlier levels, I have big concerns about there. We have to equip our kids to be able to learn in a modern economy, but I think there are better ways of doing it than being equipped every day and being distracted in that way. I think there are ways we can have carts and we can have sort of mobile classrooms that allow kids to have those opportunities without investing hundreds of millions of dollars when we have other needs that we should be prioritizing and focusing on.
Thank you so
And
much.
can I hear from Tom Quirk on that one too, please?
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of balancing, a matter of prioritization. And while I do like STAT and digital devices with our kids, it's a question of how do we stretch a dollar? Because in politics and in government, it's always a battle for scarce resources. There's unlimited demands and very limited resources. And we are fighting right now for Lansdowne High School. We're fighting for Woodlawn High School. We're fighting for a lot of infrastructure projects that are paid for out of our capital budget. And then, of course, out of our operating budget, that's how we're funding STAT. And it is a big number. I know Councilman Jones is a very strong believer in STAT. I don't know if he wants to talk about it a little bit. But I think in today's technology, in today's era, all our kids are growing up with computers. Computers are all around. So we need to make sure our kids know how to use them, not just the wealthy and privileged, but the people that don't have the money. I tell you, I go to libraries, libraries like this one. You look around, look how many kids are using the computers here. Well, I think they should be using them in schools too. So I have a little bit different view on this. I think we have to balance, we have to prioritize, but I also think our kids need to know how to use computers. I don't know if Councilman Jones wants to chime in.
I'll be real brief. Listen, you can say anything you want, but in 2018, computers is where the kids' attention are. You can do so much more with computers. For example, with computers real fast, a teacher can look and see what every student is doing and make sure every student has the message he's trying to convey versus waiting for a kid to raise his hand. And like Councilman Quirk said, every kid don't have access to a computer. Unfortunately, that's where we are. So it's important that when we bring kids to school, we make sure they have all the tools that every kid has. Because in this digital environment that we live in, you know, if we don't move forward in terms of computers, I mean, we're doing a disservice to our kids. You can do so much more. And real quick, well, just politician quick.
That's one thing you are good at.
In terms of the money, no one can say that Baltimore County over the last 8 years is not doing everything it can to modernize our schools. We spend 52 cents on every tax dollar in our schools. If you add in the libraries and the community college, that's 60% of every tax dollar going to some form of education. And you look at the number of air conditions that were done. Over 90 schools without air conditioning 8 years ago. Now we're down to like 10 or 12, and they'll be done in a couple of years. So we're spending an awful lot of money on our schools. Not to say that it's not necessary, but as Councilman Quirk said, there's a lot of need in our community. We have police officers riding around with 20-year-old motorcycles.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. This gentleman was next for questions. Oh, you had to go.
No, I just wanted to say, I believe in the balance that our kids do need to learn computers. But if you talk to teachers, they want to talk about curriculum, and teachers want to teach.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Kenny Brown. For full transparency, I'm the publisher of the Northwest Voice newspaper. But I'm also the political consultant for Senator Shirley Naples. Mine is a comment. I thought this was an excellent forum. But I would like to say to the planners that if you wanted full participation of all your elected officials, and especially your state, Monday night is the worst night you could have done. If you notice, Senator Shirley Naples, Pulliam is here. Delegate Pat Young, Delegate Signal. They're not here simply because they have to be in Annapolis on Monday night. So, in the future, take that under consideration.
Thank you very much.